You know who else he let down?
Don't say me.
Bruce podiatrist. Let down a lot of people. And before I get to my take here, I would ask, even if my colleagues on that side of the table still doubt the greater forces at work in sports, and even if you maybe doubt that the basketball gods were going to put their hand on the scales, as they clearly did last night, knowing that Eric Spoelstra and Jimmy Butler and Pat Riley and Alonzo Mourning and Udonis Haslem in his final game of a 20-year career was not going to be blowing the first ever 3-0 lead. Even if that's not enough for you, at this moment, you must believe in the Curse of Broussard, the powers of which we have never seen across all of sports. But however, because I believe in it, and I also empathize and feel for my partner, who I love dearly, Chris Broussard, I have done some research today. When probably I should have been studying box scores or, reviewing the All-10 with Wildes and Josh.
You should have.
I'm trying to find out because Brew, if I may reveal to the audience, is on a fitness plan for the summer, planning to walk to and from the train station to the studio.
Yes.
So I was curious,
get in shape.
Can you do that?
Yeah, where are we going?
As a toeless man. Okay. So I have some research that we can put on the screen. These are all real places. Acorn Health. Can you still walk and run with less than 10 toes? The answer is yes. They have shoes for you. Give me the next piece of research, please. From Life's Little Steps, walking without toes will impact your foot biometrics. However, you can do it. And the last one, and this was the best one I thought.
Dusty?
This is from Foot Care after amputated toes. Losing one or more toes does not mean you won't be able to walk or even run again. So, Brew, it's going to be okay. Life as a toeless man, you're going to be okay. I was shocked you still had him after the Warriors.
You were.
But at this point, you're just hobbling around in here.
I will save this because the toes
are
just being transferred from Boston.
You can't do this.
To another team that I'll reveal later. Let me say this.
Yeah.
Propers and congratulations to the Miami Heat. All right, I've been hard on them.
Oh, you think? You picked
because all the
against them every
undrafted guys,
series.
and I'll talk about them a little bit later in the show. Props to them. They were great. And I sat up here yesterday and said they won't be moved by that loss in Game 6.
Yeah.
That's true.
And they were great. But I got to get to the Celtics. It pains me to say this, but Jaylen Brown said it. They failed, and they failed. They let the whole city down.
Yeah.
Grant Williams said we got punked. I'm going to put those two together and just call it like it is. You know what? They choked. They choked. Whenever you are the better team, you have the more talented team.
Okay.
You have home court advantage. You have all the momentum. And then not only do you lose, you get blasted and you score the fewest points you've scored since December of 2021.
Year and a half. Yep.
That's a choke job. I mean, if you played them tough and you just lost at the buzzer or late in the game, you didn't necessarily choke. They choked last night, and you could see it from the beginning. You could tell they were tight.
15-point first quarter.
They were tight. But Miami was tight, too. So when Boston goes up 9-4, I'm sitting there thinking, because Miami kept missing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Boston could actually blow them out, like get up by 15, something like that. And then they kept missing.
Yeah.
They missed 8 straight shots, including a layup and 6 threes.
Yeah.
And then it's almost like the Heat said, oh, they're tight. They're tight, too. And then the Heat got going and they relaxed. I don't think Boston ever relaxed.
No, you know why?
Because they were off all night.
Because home court is not an advantage for this team.
So why
and in
is
fact,
that?
well, hold on. Let me give some context for it, though, first. It is historic how bad they've been at home this postseason and last postseason.
Under Udoka.
Most home losses in a playoffs in NBA history. This year, Celtics last year's Celtics, the overachieving 0-1 Sixers with Iverson, and Charles's Phoenix Suns that had a 7-game series and then went 6 in the finals. Those other two, the other teams prior to this year's Celtics, all at least made the finals. They're the first team in NBA history to play 10 or more home playoff games and have a losing record in them. And listen, they are a disorganized, poorly coached team that does not handle adversity well. People don't like hearing this because it is an insult, but it happens in sports. There are front-running teams. Yep. I'm not trying to take a shot, but it's accurate. The Buffalo Bills, the last couple of years, have been a front-running team where when they are up a score, they look unbeatable. It's like, oh my God. And the Celtics, when the threes are falling and the ball is popping, they look great. But when they don't, when they're not falling, yesterday, and I'm not anti-3, but I do think it is not coincidental that at times teams are like, man, that was our worst three-point shooting game of the season. It happened in Game 6 of the playoffs, or the Rockets when they missed 27 straight in Game 7. The Celtics yesterday took 7 shots that weren't threes or in the paint. And I am not, preaching the gospel of the mid-range, but at some point you need to be able to get a bucket.
Yes.
And Game 6 they won despite not being able to hit their threes. And then yesterday, it should not be a shock to anyone that this team that looked weak, that looked shaky in round 1 against Atlanta, and looked shaky in round 2 against Philly, and lost 3 straight to Miami to start the series, wasn't able to close the greatest comeback in league history.
To your point quickly, Eddie Johnson, former Phoenix Suns player, now calls their game.
He's always talking trash to me on Twitter. Yeah, man.
But he had a good point. We were talking about the 3. He said a made 2 is better than a missed 3.
Okay, well
no, but seriously, that's the problem with the Celtics. You said it. They kept hoisting threes.
Yeah.
They kept jacking up threes.
Yeah.
So
go and get a 15-footer in here.
Here's the numbers. From Game 6, Hubs, can you throw that up there? We'll put a button on this. 7 for 35 from 3, shot 20%. Game 7, 9 for 42, they shot 21%. The worst by any team in a 2-game span this postseason. The weird part about this, too, is once you get down, it's like, man, how are we going to get back? Like, I got it.
Shoot threes.
Shoot some threes.
Well,
wasn't great.
But they had, by the way, just real quick,
philosophy.
they had it within 7 in the third quarter multiple times because of Derek White. So it's not as if they were down 20 the whole game and had to shoot.
It certainly
threes.
felt like it.
It felt like the Heat were in firm control.
Tatum twists his ankle early in the game, was never himself, but still put up 14 and 11. Also played 42 minutes.
You got to.
He has to play.
It's Game 7. You know what?
Well, maybe you don't have those minutes when Jimmy Butler's just blowing right past you because you're on one good ankle. Here he is after the game. Okay. Brew, is that the reason the Celtics lost?
I'm not going to say it's the main reason. But it's hard to say, though, because we can't even say, well, when they say got hurt 5 minutes in, we can't even say, well, they were off already. They weren't playing well even before he got hurt. He got hurt literally on the first play. And he clearly was hurt. Look, I give him credit for gutting it out, played 42 minutes, had a game-high 11 rebounds. But clearly he was like, I'm a decoy. That's what he was out there for because he only took 13 shots.
Or a decoy for what?
To try to hopefully you're trying to get the
that guy
defense.
Can't move. It's not much of a decoy.
You're trying to get the defense. You're the star. You get the defensive focus on you. You would hope that would open things up for others. Because he only took 13 shots. So he wasn't himself. But no, that's not the main reason they lost. Because Jaylen Brown didn't show up. Nobody else showed up. And I give the Heat credit. Spoelstra, we knew he was going to outcoach Mazzulla. But what he did was he had his guards were pressuring in the backcourt. That kept Boston from pushing the pace and got him in their offense late. And then he went small a lot, knowing they're not going to drive to the basket because we're small. They're going to keep jacking up threes. And that's what they did.
Turned ankles happen. I'm sorry. They do. You do not.
Well, there's different degrees.
And there's different degrees of it. And to me, like we saw Jimmy suffer what looked like going to be
against the Knicks, right?
Yeah, he missed a game. It was and missed a game because of it. You don't get dispensation in the NBA in a Game 7 if you turn your ankle. Not if you have to leave the game and it's knocked out for the game, that's unfortunate. But he played 42 minutes because he had a sore ankle and was able to. And you saw it the sore ankle had nothing to do with him smoking the layup when they were attempting to come back at the start of the fourth quarter. It had nothing to do, in my opinion, with the poor shot selection when he did take shots. Like, this is part of being a superstar in this league, is finding ways to overcome even when you aren't right. And and this is where, and we'll talk about it when we get to the Heat in a moment, this is where I believe the Heat were going to have multiple ways to win. The Celtics, evidently, the moment it wasn't, Tatum, can you have a historic Game 7 again? They score, as Bruce said, the fewest points they've scored in a year and a half. And that last time they did it was a game Tatum didn't even play. Right. Like, they scored 84. Their season low this year was 92. Mm-hmm. So this is far and away the fewest points they've scored. I don't think it's fair. I think it is taking away what the Heat accomplished to say, and I am glad, I know you're not saying it, that, oh yeah, if Tatum doesn't turn his ankle, they win the game.
All right, so just quickly, played 42 minutes. Mm-hmm. It felt like he wasn't effective. He said he wasn't effective, but he also wasn't hurt so poorly that he could be benched. You're fine with him playing 42 minutes and being just out there?
The thing is, who were you putting in that was going to play better?
Brogdon didn't have it, and he was hurt. You could tell that's why he had missed the game. And I know, and again, we keep saying things we'll get to. We got the whole show to talk about it. This is where you hope your second guy can step up. And he tried. Jaylen Brown didn't disappear in this game. He tried to fill the void. Horribly. He just played terribly. And I don't know what's better. Like, if it was just the moment's too big and I fade into the background, I actually think that's worse.
I prefer this. Right.
Yeah, then listen, he went down shooting, but he's not a good dribbler. And he was inefficient, and he's not as good a defender as he was a couple years ago.
Yeah, work on his handle.
Luckily, it's only going to be $58 million a year to keep him.
I mean, Jimmy ends the game with 28, 7, and 6. What did Jimmy and the Heat prove?
The single most valuable thing you can have in the NBA is overwhelming talent. That will trump everything. Steph, KD, Warriors, Shaq, Kobe, Lakers. That, if you have overwhelming talent, the Heatles, you know what I mean, when Wade was helped before Wade fell off, then you can win almost despite yourself. The second best thing you can have is what the Miami Heat have. Great culture, great coaching, and one undeniable leader. And that is the path teams should try to follow. We have seen that work. We saw the overwhelming talent. I mentioned the examples. But what about Isaiah's Pistons? They have a great coach in Chuck Daly, a great leader.
This isn't Isaiah's Pistons.
No, I know that, but I'm talking. Isaiah's Pistons had
he was
more
overwhelming talent. Isaiah.
He was the overwhelming talent. I'm talking about the trickle down from there.
Mark Aguirre's a top pick.
I don't want to.
Really,
that's fair. They have more talent in this team. My point is though, but they went through Bird's Celtics, Jordan's Bulls, the Magic and Kareem's Lakers. They were not more talented than a lot of those teams, but they had the culture and the system. The 04 Pistons, we saw do it. I would argue the Spurs, when they beat the Heat in 2014, because Kawhi wasn't a superstar yet, but they had a great coach, a great culture, and the Heat at that point no longer had overwhelming talent. The Heat have that. And that is why they are the better team. They played Boston 7 times. They were 0.2 away from beating them 5 of the 7. Mm-hmm. They blew them out in the 2 most important games of the year. They are the better team, even if they don't have more talent.
I don't compare them to any of those teams you did.
What if they win the title?
That's fine, but they're not the Spurs of Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, and Tony Parker.
I'm talking in 2014. They weren't those teams, but that's fine. But go ahead.
Duncan was still great. And he wasn't himself, but he still was a great defender, was going to get 15 and 10, and Ginobili and Parker were still great. But here's what I'll say about them, though. The undrafted, and I've been hard on the undrafted players, all right? But what do the undrafted players do? They stay 4 years in college. They haven't been treated as superstars since they were 15 years old. They come into the league as grown men. and they have a tough attitude, like we're going to work our tail off. The guys that get drafted today are typically one and dones from the G League type stuff, overtime elite, two and dones, international guys. These guys work their tail off, and it'll be interesting to see, because this has been for years that you'd see a four-year college player who got drafted late in the first round, early second, play well. I wonder if teams will look at this from the Heat and say, some of these four-year college players who know how to play the game versus a one and done, that you need to look at some of those guys.
If I may quickly, I think that's backwards. I don't think it's that they have this, that it's because they're four-year guys and undrafted guys.
I'm not saying it's just because they're undrafted.
It's because of where they are. It's because of the culture.
There's
of Pat
other
Riley
guys like this. Austin Reeves is undrafted. Played 4 years.
I get that there are going to be, individual examples, but we cannot deny that the story with the Heat have been, for the last 4 years, they have less talent than these other teams. They keep beating them. They have less talent. Why? It is not a coincidence that they are the team that has a 20-year vet who never plays on the roster. They value it. Continuity at the coaching staff, continuity from Pat Riley, and a no-nonsense leader. That wins. That is winning basketball, and they keep showing it.
Want to hear a theory going to break?
Yeah.
They like being the underdog. That's why they need to go to a Game 7. When they're up 3-0, it's like, hey, you got to finish this out. They're like, nah, we'll wait till we're underdogs. Wait. Then finally underdogs, and they won. That's a closing take. From
I like that. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get more from the show and to check out clips from other shows on FS1.